Hi, everybody, and welcome to Elevate Living Studio podcast. And today I've got a great guest on to talk about something important to every woman out there listening to this. I've got Cynthia Plaikas here with us. She's going to tell us a little bit more about her expertise and what she has been working with women over the course of 25 years. And today the title for this one is going to be Pelvic Floor for the Core. This is a very important subject. And Cynthia, first of all, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
I really, truly appreciate that.
Good to be here.
And as I guess the first question I would have is, and some people are curious about this, what even is the pelvic floor and why should we care?
Right. So the pelvic floor is a connective tissue that supports the organs of the pelvis. So connective tissue or muscle, meaning the pelvic floor is like a hammock. It connects from the pubic bone to the coccyx tail. So it's a sling from front to back, and it's a sling from side to side. It attaches to the ischial tuberosity, which are the bottom points of the hip bones of the pelvis.
Okay.
So it's almost like a diamond on the bottom of the pelvic floor, and it holds the uterus, the bladder, and the bowels. It also stabilizes the pelvis and the lower back.
Okay. And so what does it control? Like, what is it helping us to do? What is it, kind of in charge of in some ways?
It's responsible for stabilizing.
Mm-hmm.
It's responsible for holding in the organs, and it's responsible for really your lower back health, which is where yoga teachers come into play with the core.
Okay.
So it stabilizes and it helps hold in the organs in the positions that they're supposed to be in and move how they're supposed to move and react.
Okay. So now if we're talking about the pelvic floor, and then I think a lot of people immediately go to the commercials you see on TV for bladder leakage, or after having a child, it was all of a sudden things changed and nothing felt quite the same and I had more issues. So where does it fall into that?
So it falls into that where we age, we move, we walk, we give birth. The pelvic floor weakens or it drops, as you hear with birthing. And then the organs shift and it's hard for the pelvic floor to keep up. Low tone, not exercising, not moving the body is all going to cause weakness in the pelvic floor. Or there's the opposite of tightness, where you're too tight, the pelvic floor is gripping and nothing is working as it's possible. That could lead to incontinence, leaking if it's weak, or it could be constipation if it's tight.
I know, and that was interesting when you and I spoke about that, is I never would have thought that constipation would have anything to do.
Because of the bowels. So, I mean, everything has to fit in this slot the way it's supposed to. And the health of the pelvic floor is the health of the organs that are above it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So I know when you, and I did share this with you, is that somehow I made it through, 2 vaginal births and had no issues afterwards, really. So I felt like, okay, this is going to be easy for me going on through my life. And it wasn't until I got much further into my 60s that it felt like, okay, things are a little different here. But it was more I think what they term it urge incontinence. Like I run downstairs and I hit the kitchen floor and the kitchen floor is ice cold because I live in an old house. And all of a sudden I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom right away, like right this second. So how does the pelvic floor play into that situation?
So that would be maybe a weakness in the pelvic floor in the tissue, which happens when we age, especially women during menopause. Everything gets thinner, things get drier. We're not as active. Even just getting up out of your desk and walking will help something like that. But the change in temperature is a sensitivity thing. It would come through your feet and then it would come up through the pelvis. And the opposite of that, if you're too clenched and too tight, a lot of strong female athletes who work out so much, they find themselves too tight. That would lead to urgency. Like I have a soda and I'm having 2 sips and I have to go to the bathroom immediately.
Okay. And
too tight, too weak. It's like the extremes.
I know. And it seems so funny because you think tight would be like, oh, I'm great. I can hold everything and I don't have any urges to do this.
Right.
And, way back, I'm going back, 20, 30 years, it was just, we'll do Kegels. Kegels will help you.
Right.
And that'll solve everything. And the more you do, the better it is. And now I'm hearing that's not quite true.
Right. The Kegels are good for squeezing the vaginal muscles and the rectum. So you'll squeeze and you'll feel that. However, you have to correlate the breath with the pelvic floor and the breathing diaphragms in order to have it function properly. It moves up, it moves down. So also one of the things that I would notice on my clients are lower back and pelvic pain in certain movement. And I can tell that it's very hard to access the pelvic floor. So then we would work on the breath component, and that would help the pelvic floor.
Okay.
Either loosen or tighten, whatever we need.
All right. And you just do that more so. Now, again, you've been for what, 25 years?
25
teaching
years
yoga?
Teaching yoga. And I just kind of came into this. It's not something that I did in the beginning. I just kind of came into it working with so many women who had different problems. I've had clients who have had pelvic floor surgeries. I've seen, not after they go to physical therapy. I'm not a doctor, but they come to me and we work on developing more of those muscles through the yoga connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to kind of be proactive yourself to hopefully not get to the point where you need a surgery?
So what I always say to my clients is pay attention to your posture and pay attention to any postural sensitivities. So I can give you an example of someone who might stand with their chest sticking way out. This is just your normal posture. They have a really curvy back. The chest sticks out. They have what's called rib flare, and their pelvis is in an anterior tilt. That's going to move all the organs in the pelvis back along with the pelvic floor. So I would pay attention to that, or someone who is super rounded and hunched over. So if you pay attention to your posture, then you work on your breath. It's like a secondary thing. A, posture. B, breath. 3, pelvic floor exercises.
Okay.
It goes in conjunction together.
All right.
So that, like, pay attention to your postural alignment and pay attention to any sensitivities that you might have in the lower back, or bowel changes, urinary changes, sexual changes. There's that too, where there can be pain when you're sexually active.
And that's tied to the pelvic floor?
That is absolutely tied to the pelvic floor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a weak pelvic floor, will it affect sexual changes, or is it a tight pelvic floor? Does it more, or
I don't know those specifics, but I do know that the function of it is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
And that's very important, and especially as we get older.
Well,
we don't
it is
give
health.
Up
it is health. I mean, that is health.
Right.
I mean, it is part of the health. So in yoga, what I do is once I look at posture, or if people are complaining to me, we always think lower back. Oh, it must be this. Well, let's do some deep breathing first, and let's try to centerize and localize if it is the pelvic floor, and how that works.
Okay. One of the other things you and I spoke about was sometimes with that urge incontinence or so, that it could be like we're holding breath.
That's right. That is correct. Right. So the breath plays a big piece in it. We are all born with our breath patterns, and due to whatever our life is, anxiety, depression, everyone's so stressed now, work, a lot of times we hold our breath constantly.
Right.
Not even know it's not a thing like, hang on a second, I have to inhale and then I have to exhale. We don't do that. It just happens.
Okay.
So to consciously focus in on the breath, that is going to help you use the pelvic floor. There's a lot of, I've gone to many classes, various classes, not just yoga. And, the thing is, lift the pelvic floor. But then no one teaches you how to lift the pelvic floor, and you don't know if you're feeling it. You don't know how to do it.
Right.
So that is where I would start.
Okay.
Is learning how to access the pelvic floor.
Interesting. Okay. Yep. So that real good body awareness.
Body awareness, posture, those might be the cues. The leaky, the constipation, all of that together, someone would be able to diagnose if that's a pelvic floor issue.
Now, does pelvic floor eventually help us in terms of, they talk about so much about as you get older, it's really important to be able to get up off the floor.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Those muscles that you strain, the pelvic floor is a lifting from the bottom of the navel, the pubic bone.
Okay.
It's that lifting. I call that area the front of the back.
Okay.
It's the front of the lower back. And so, any kind of strain, if you're straining to do a bowel movement, if you're straining to urinate, if you're squatting down and you're straining to lift something, if you're not breathing properly, that's pelvic floor.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a functional thing, which is why we all struggle.
And so something else I read when I was doing a little bit of research before we had a chance to sit down and talk, some people think, well, if I just force it, if I really push or strain to have a bowel movement, or if I push or strain to get the urinary flow going because I feel as though I have to go, but nothing's happening,
Right.
that actually works against us.
That's
because
right.
what we should do is relax and let the body do what it was meant to do.
That's right. And that's a lot, right? To relax.
These days, we just
That's
want
a
to get
lot.
it done.
To relax is, yeah, but it's true. You want to relax the pelvic floor with breath. And I mean, I can take us through a round of that.
Okay.
So, you would, the pelvic floor works with the breathing diaphragms, which are two very large domes underneath the rib cage. And it's the opposite of what you would think. When you take an inhale, your pelvic floor goes down and it widens out into that diamond shape that I was talking about where the connections are. And then when you exhale, the pelvic floor rises up. So that's when you're going to get your connection of the pelvic floor, is on the exhalation up. So you would take an inhale, pelvic floor goes down and it widens. And then when you exhale, we've all heard this in exercise class, you draw your navel in. That doesn't mean to press your back to the floor. It means you pull your navel in and maybe you do a little squeeze of the vaginal and the rectum muscles, and that's your pelvic floor lifting. It's like a cone. People refer to it as a zipper. So It's a big inhale, and then as you exhale, at the end of your exhale, you draw that navel up and in, and you'll feel that little lift.
Okay.
You might feel it more vaginally. You might feel it more in the center of your belly. But that's the subtle way of making the pelvic floor active without squeezing and squeezing we do all this squeezing of the butt cheeks and squeezing and bridge poses and all these poses. And you have to be able to work with the breath to do it. So the diaphragm is the top of the core.
Okay.
The pelvic floor is the bottom of the core, which is why I call it the pelvic floor for the core. It's the deep core that we talk about.
Okay.
That's how you learn to drive it up and in.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. There's a lot to the breath. So when you get that breath count, you can, even though you're drawing the belly button up and in, you're still able to have that function in a relaxed state on the way down. And then it's a tugging in. It's not, I got to squeeze and pull. It's a gentle tugging up and in.
Okay.
You'll find that your posture is better. You'll find that you're standing up straighter. I find, at least, and I've known that that's been the feedback from my clients. They might not necessarily feel it, but they feel a little taller.
Okay. Now, would that be something that you would practice all through the day for a certain amount of the day, or just, even take 5 minutes and just concentrate on your breathing?
For yoga, that would be my suggestion. I don't know. Pilates, yoga, and pelvic floor therapists are the best way to do it. Pelvic floor therapy is wonderful. Pilates is wonderful. And yoga, I think, is wonderful for the breath piece. I would recommend, if you're a meditator, first thing in the morning, if you're not in the afternoon, you don't have to sit up. I like people to lay down.
Okay.
And I like them to feel the back body on the mat or on the floor. And I would do a couple of those rounds of breath. And you have to try to find a visual. When you inhale, can you think of, I don't know, a light ball going down a pole, and then it widens out. And when you exhale, it comes back up. And that's when you're going to pull the guts in a little bit. You're going to maybe squeeze the rectum or the back. You'll find something that, like, oh, I feel that. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. You do a couple rounds of that, it might take you 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So that's something that everybody can kind of fit into their day.
Absolutely.
Now, how does somebody know, without talking to, say, a pelvic floor therapist or a yoga teacher or a Pilates teacher, whether they are tight or just weak? Is there a way that you could kind of say, oh, maybe this is my issue?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't really know what I know that a lot of people who have rib flare have a disconnect to the pelvic floor, and a lot of times that's tight.
Okay.
Weakness, I think you feel that heavy prolapse happening.
Okay.
So if your pelvic floor is weak, you feel it's almost like a ball. You start to feel it in the vaginal muscles because those are your organs dropping.
Okay.
And that's when people will feel it, unfortunately, at that stage. And that, I believe it requires surgery.
Okay.
So there's easy surgeries for the pelvic floor. Like I said, I've had clients and everyone's come out of it fantastically.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's very good to know.
Right.
So the other part of the research that I saw too is that yoga and yoga breathing and specific things you can do, surrounding yoga and the body can be very helpful.
That's right.
For strengthening the core.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the breathing, the gluteal work that we do, the abdominal work we do, yoga works more of the deep core, which is, so you think of the core as the six pack, that nice little six pack. The yoga works behind that.
Okay.
So the deep core is going to help you with your stabilizing your lower back and your pelvic floor muscles. It works along with the transverse abdominals, otherwise known as the TVA, that wrap around your waistline like a cummerbund.
Okay.
You do have abs around the back. So that's in yoga, what we would do is we would connect all of that.
All right. And is there a way to know, okay, yoga or Pilates isn't going to do this. I need a pelvic floor therapist. Or I know you say that sometimes you kind of know when to.
I always refer my clients, if they're having a specific problem and I see them a couple times and we're not making any progress, that's when I always tell people you probably want to go see a doctor or a pelvic floor specialist.
I had never even heard of that.
I know. And I only know what I know. I do this from,
Right.
my yoga training, but pelvic floor specialists are amazing. And a lot of women who have had twins or have had multiple births close to each other, pelvic floor therapists, physical therapists are amazing. They get you
Wow.
right back on track. A lot of the PT exercises are quite similar to what
Okay.
we do in yoga as far as the deep core goes.
Okay. Interesting. See, I
Yeah.
never, a lot of this.
There's a lot. I know there's a lot. There's a lot.
All
I
right.
think because when we work out and we work our abs, we don't think of, oh, I'm going to work my back abs and my bladder today in the gym.
Right. No.
We're going to work our legs or our arms. We're not thinking of working our internal organs.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Right.
So would any yoga teacher be able to say, oh, no, I know exactly what you're talking about and I can help you with that? Or is that more, I know I heard you say in the beginning, it was something you came into from working
Right.
with multiple clients over the years.
Yeah, I would think that most yoga teachers would be educated to help with the low belly and the pelvic floor. It could be a specialty.
Okay.
I know Pilates, definitely, they work with that all the time.
Okay.
I guess it depends on what kind of yoga you're doing.
All right. Now, something else as we start to wrap up here a little bit is we had talked about is if you are here in the South Deerfield area and this is something you might be interested in and talking to somebody or knowing somebody that is very attuned into what to look for and also when to go to somebody else to move it to the next level, we talked about maybe doing some small classes here
That's
to
right.
really, strengthen the core.
Right. And to make awareness, we would do a 30-minute deep core class to learn. Once you learn how to activate the deep core, you can then feel that pelvic floor more. And when you move with your breath and that kind of conscious awareness, you're going to be able to move your body into poses a lot better.
Okay.
So that's what it's all about. Instead of holding and retaining the breath in this is really hard for me, learn how to use the breath through the deep core to keep you centered.
I also think with the core strength is
Yes.
going to help us all. I know as we go into the winter, and I'm remembering last winter and my driveway covered with ice for over a month. And that was my key thing every day is just don't fall.
That's right.
Don't fall
That's right.
because if you fall, you're here by yourself in your driveway.
Right. And that's
What's
all
gonna
part of
happen?
it. Right. So a 30-minute class would get you about 10 minutes of some nice breath work
Okay.
to activate that. And then we would work on some poses to really engage the pelvic floor together.
Wow,
Yeah.
I would love that. So we are going to start putting that together and invite Cynthia to lead us all. I do want to put this out here too, is that if you haven't visited the studio, Elevate Living Studio is right down here in South Deerfield. We're right beside Gianni Figs, and a lot of people know where that is. More and more people are discovering the studio and everything that we do here, which is a lot. And one of the things we would like to introduce is being able to offer some small classes to strengthen the core. And so therefore, a lot of women don't talk about this. It's something we know is happening. You see all the different commercials for it. But I really want to be able to have a real open conversation about
Right.
as we age, or even if we're younger and we've had birth or something has happened to us, is that this is something we should talk about. You brought it up at the beginning too, is that now people are starting to be more comfortable talking just about menopause.
Right.
And menopause ties into a lot when these issues start to exacerbate.
That is correct, because it is a big change. It's important too. I find myself with small groups, people are more apt to talk to you
Yes.
and to ask you a question rather than if you're at the gym with a group, vinyasa yoga class of 25 people. People aren't going to talk about it, but in a small group, it's nice. And you ask a question that might really help someone else, or they feel more comfortable than asking another question
Right.
if it's a small group of us.
So
we can dial right into that.
Which would be great. Now, Cynthia, at the end of this, we're also going to put up your information. Are you comfortable with people reaching out to you, to either set up some one-on-one time? I don't know. I know you're really busy. I know you have a pretty strong clientele as it is.
Right. Yeah, I would be happy to help people if they need it and
Okay.
see if it works.
If it's the right thing, or maybe
That
a
is
small
correct.
class would be great.
That is correct.
And all of that. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this for a long time.
My pleasure.
And I love that you're passionate.
We want to help people.
Absolutely. And I
Right.
know you're passionate about
I
it. And
am.
It's very important.
That's right.
This is so tied into our health as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say watch out for this. Watch out for the coming classes, folks. We're going to put it up, and it will be for the Elevate Living Studio right down here in South Deerfield. I want to thank you again, Cynthia, for joining us today. I want to thank everybody out there who's listening. I hope you heard some great information today, and we will be following up with that. So I thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.